Welcome back to Naked History Debrief, our comfy chair, post-credits scene, and permission slip to nerd out on everything that didn't quite fit into the main episode. Tonight we're topping off the cauldron with buried details, side quest, and a few, from history's Halloween archive. Then we'll close with This Week in History from October 27th to November 1st, a stretch of days that somehow fits the New York subway, Cuba, and a Martian radio hoax into the same calendar sleeve. So go ahead and buckle your seatbelts, although they're optional, but curiosity is required. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Now first up is our naked regrets, i.e. what we trimmed, clarified, or owe your receipts for. First up is Samhain wasn't just vibes, it's in the dirt. So we framed Samhain as a seasonal hinge, and archaeology backs up the scale. Sites like the Hill of Ward in County Meath show evidence of large fires and repeated gathering. Think infrastructure, not campout. Myth puts stress on that date too. The tale of Allen burning the hall at Tara each Samhain until Finn McCool stops the cycle tells you that the night carried narrative voltage as well. Also, All Hallowtide is a 3-day arc with literal bells on. Now, we talked about All Saints and All Souls, and town sometimes posted indulgences for attending masses, alms, bell ringing, and the clock wasn't just timekeeping, it was theology. Also, something popular is the Dumb Supper. It's a silent place for the dead set on October 31st. It survives in pockets of Britain and American Appalachia. Post-Reformation, some communities swapped All Souls Day for Reformation Day in honor of Martin Luther's theses being posted on the church door. It's the same date, but just different hymnal. Now, Trick or Treat also has a little bit more of a history than we alluded to in the main episode. The phrase shows up in North American print by the late 1920s, famously in the 1927 Alberta reports about Halloween trick-or-treat rounds, and then spreads through the 30s in Canada and Western U.S. newspaper. It codifies a bargain that had already began acting on itself. Symbolic mischief offered, sweet diplomacy accepted. And speaking of candy, within the stranger danger canon of Halloween, the razor blades and apples is a myth that wrote policy. So the verified cases that match the random stranger poisoning legend are vanishingly rare. But the panic did reshape the behavior, which included factories sealing candy in wrappers and increased hospital x-rays. It's a trust signal more so than anything. In low light, you need to know that what you're getting is sealed. It's more sociology than safety. Speaking of light, the difference between bonfire does not always equal bonfire. Yes, the autumn slaughter happens. Yes, bones may be burned, but the tidy etymology is debated. Now, Middle English banefire, which stands for beacon or ban, is also in the mix. It's a great story, but with unfortunately mixed evidence. Now, in the main episode, we did a couple of tradition and icons of Halloween, and one of the biggest is the will-o'-wisps. And folklore says that you don't follow strange light into marshes, and that's pretty much true regardless of age. But science has told that it's marsh gases, but more specifically, phosphine and methane that oxidizes over wetlands and flash. Not only are you getting history facts, you're getting science facts. Look at that. Now with black cats, there's always been a little bit of an update as history goes on. In British maritime lore and in Japan, they're good luck, as we had talked about in the main episode, and they were smeared as witch familiars. But in modern day, shelters ban adopting black cats in October because of the threat of harm to those animals. Now, I will say that they are not universal. Many organizations rely on year-round screening. But for those who already have a void loaf in their house, it's probably bringing you more good luck than bad. And I'm sure that the purring is also an added plus. Speaking of households, We talked about early modern households being built with bad luck defenses right in the walls, the scratched symbols near the chimneys and doors. But one of the things I wanted to touch on was witch bottles. And these were the stoneware filled with pins, hair, nail clippings, urine that were buried under thresholds to bounce that malice back. It was essentially giving the spirits, a different version of yourself for them to latch onto, and whenever they tried to cross through and it wasn't you, they got bounced back. Now, speaking of houses as well, additionally, the witch bottles, but also single shoes, often children's, and occasionally mummified cats were used as hearth guardians. Now, today's chalk sigils and faux iron fences are more aesthetic heirs to practical fears. And finally, up before we get to This Week in History, we're going to talk about sort of the food that makes the season and how Halloween has sort of spread into different cultures. So first up is going to be soul cakes, the small spiced currant-studded mounds marked with a cross that were exchanged during souling for prayers. We have those, but we also have barmbrack. In Ireland, this bread comes baked with tokens such as a ring for marriage, a coin for prosperity, or sometimes peas or sticks. I'll let you figure out the connotation of that. And colcannon sometimes also hid charms, another bread that was made over in Europe. Something else that also hangs on is the apple games. Now, first they use trimmings and other ephemera to try and figure out their romantic goals and their romantic futures. Nowadays, we see a shift from that to communal bobbing and hanging apples on strings if you're a little afraid of a head cold in the fall. Additionally, we have Cabbage Night, which earned its name honestly with kale redecorations, courtesy of Teen Misrule. And with the food comes the different cultures. Now, we talked about Mexico and some of the other Eastern European countries, but in Iberia, Catalonia eats chestnuts and panellets. In Portugal, they roast chestnuts. In Italy, they bake bone-shaped cookies to celebrate the season. In the British Isles, the revival is as much of import as it is export. Turnips will politely cede to pumpkins, but on November 5th, Guy Fawkes Night is still very much a part of the British tradition. It sees a revival in the mid to late 20th century, and it claims the bonfire, but pallets and pumpkins still coexist to this day. Also, on the Isle of Man, Hoptuna keeps its own lantern songbook, but with words older than Halloween itself. It's basically the cousin that never moved away, not really a copy. So with the naked regrets done, we can get into This Week in History. Now, we'll actually have 2 events for each of these days just because this part of the year is so jam-packed with everyone wanting to do everything at the same time. So on October 27th, in 1858, Theodore Roosevelt is born. Rough Rider, trustbuster, and National Parks hype man. He even once finished a speech after being shot. And on that same day in 1904, New York City opens the first subway line. From City Hall to 145th Street, distance collapses, but capes swish, just not at rush hour. On October 28th of 1886, the Statue of Liberty is dedicated. A gift from France, it was a promise in copper. Now, the original torch was as much fire hazard as it was gleaming light of hopeful future. It would be replaced in 1986. But in 1962, on October 28th, the Cuban Missile Crisis de-escalates. Between the Soviet Union and the United States, Khrushchev eventually blinks, and through a back channel, the world exhales. It becomes officially the scariest October without costumes in history. On October 29th of 1929, we have Black Tuesday, the day that the Great Depression officially starts. The market falls to the floor, and the Great Depression deepens. It's all horror with no cheap fog machine. And on the 29th of October in 1969, we see the first ARPANET message, or the first internet message. From UCLA to Stanford, 2 letters were sent over, just LO. The system crashed, actually, before they finished the word login. It accidentally invents the meme pipeline. On the 30th, we get the War of the Worlds radio broadcast in 1938. Orson Welles adapts H.G. Wells, and pockets of panic ensue. It's Trick or Treat on the air. And on that day in 1974, we get the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali versus Foreman in Zaire. Rope-a-dope enters the lexicon. And on the main date, October 31st, in 1517, we have Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Whether nailed or mailed, the Reformation's door moment lands on All Hallows' Eve. Also on Halloween, one of the greatest disappearing acts of all time. In 1926, magician Harry Houdini dies. Master of escape undone by a ruptured appendix. Magicians leave a chair empty each Halloween. In 1941, on October 31st, Mount Rushmore is officially declared complete. Four faces, endless debates. Stone can finish, but stories don't. And finishing up on the 1st of November, 1800, John Adams moves into the White House. While the paint was drying, he writes down and prays for an honest and wise man to inherit the roof before him. I think history just shrugs in multiple directions after that. Well, that's it for this Naked History Debrief. I have a couple of homework for everybody listening. Have you built an ofrenda? Well, if you have, send us a photo. Blur your names if you'd like, but we'd love to share some of the love of the season. Does your town run a pumpkin smash, or do you donate to a local farm? If you do, report how many jacks were returned to the soil. And lastly, if your family lore says your town said trick or treat before 1927, bring in the clipping. Your history moment awaits. But that's the afterglow. If this haunt through history brightened your October, follow us at Naked History on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And leave a 5-star review with your cleverest seasonal pun, because the Ishi are always watching. Next, on the main feed is going to be the Thanksgiving We Don't Tell. 2 tables, 1 story. The mythic 1621 feast on one side, the Wampanoag diplomatic encounter on the other. We'll talk about Tisquantum and Squanto as a captive broker survivor, and the 1637 hinge to Thanksgiving tied to a massacre, and the Civil War invention of a national holiday. It'll be gratitude without guilt tourism with sources that have seats at the table. I've been Dylan Gassaway, and this has been Naked History Debrief. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep your lanterns honest, your candy bowls generous, and your curiosity louder than the wind. Hope everybody has a happy Halloween, and stay safe out there.